Welcome to The Crossover, joining Jews and Christians through their God. We hope you enjoyed that little segment. That was the play A Talmud Tale, and in there, playing Rashi, is Dan Gordon. Dan, before the break, we were talking about Mishnah. In the Torah, everybody knows, Moses got the 10 Commandments. One of the commandments is to observe the Sabbath, but it doesn't go in any detail. You said the Mishnah would clarify that. Give us another example of Mishnah.
That's exactly right, Mitch. For instance, the Torah doesn't talk about things like lighting the Sabbath candles. That's one of the commandments that is listed in the Mishnah, as well as what time to light the Sabbath candles, how long before sundown the candles are to be lit. So the parameters of what's happening in the Sabbath. The Torah will list that you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. So the Mishnah derives...
Does it define what work is?
It defines what work is. It takes different aspects from the Torah. For instance, at one point, the commandment about not working on the Sabbath is right around the place where the instructions about building the tabernacle are listed. And so all the work that's listed about the tabernacle, those are things that are prohibited to do on the Sabbath. And there are actually 39 of those that were developed by the codifiers of the Mishnah.
So Rashi was a Talmud commentator. Obviously, he was known as a very wise man. How many commentators are there that we are extracting this wisdom and knowledge from?
The number of commentators is something that would be impossible to count, because so many others would have put their 2 cents in, or 2 shekels in, as it would. Rashi lived in the 11th century, and Rashi picked up much of what others had said. Rashi lived at a time several hundred years after much of these comments were being done, and Rashi put it together in a very easy way to read. Rashi sort of had a comment about almost every line in the entire Torah. And so some of what Rashi had to say was derived from what he had learned from previous teachings.
So who decides who stays, who gets in the Chumash, and who doesn't? I mean, who makes that decision?
Well, that answer is, the term we use is the rabbis. And that is sort of a mysterious kind of thing to say, well, who makes the final decision, and why did, for instance, the book of Maccabees not make it into the Tanakh and the book of Esther did? Those kinds of decisions we can't really attribute to a particular justice like we can in the United States court system.
Now, in the play, Akiva was a sheep herder, and I think he was around 40 at the time, and he decided to go to a house of study called a Beit Midrash, which you say today would be yeshiva, still exists, correct. Schools to study the Talmud. Now, it sounded like by the play, it wasn't normal for a sheep herder to be in that, to go for study. Was it separated for a certain class of a Jewish person, or who went to the Beit Midrash?
Sometimes it would be distinguished by class. It's one of the things that this is a story and a legend. Akiva was a real person. And according to the teaching, Akiva was a 40-year-old illiterate shepherd who decided late in life to become a learned man and became one of our greatest teachers. It's part legend and part real, that we don't know exactly the facts, but it's part of what Akiva's life represents is the legend that today, when people say, oh, I'm too old to study, we say, look at Akiva. He didn't study till he was 40 years old. One of the interesting connections about the play is Rabbi Abrams herself. As a young adult, did not have much knowledge of Judaism until she actually went to rabbinical school. And so Rabbi Abrams' life is very much like Akiva's life. She learned about Torah late in life, and then she learned about theater even later when she decided to produce this play.
Dan, back then, I guess we're going centuries, were women even allowed to study Torah at all?
Studying Torah for women was not something that was done. The roles of women were clearly defined in other ways. And
through the Midrash?
Through the Midrash, through the Mishnah, through tradition, through the simple ways of society. Not that much unlike in secular society as well, but that the woman's role at that time would have been so busy, centered around the important things having to do with raising a family, that she would not have time for study, and that the men would be the only ones who would have had time to do that.
So this is more of a modern event where women are actually studying the Torah and became in
Rabbi
writing.
Abrams herself to be a woman rabbi. We've had women rabbis for over 30 years now, and it's a wonderful thing, and they bring such a great perspective.
So these writings, Dan, how old are we going back? How far back in time?
We're going back to around the 1st century, and it wasn't written down until the beginning of the 2nd century.
So these are pretty antiquated. Can we gather really wisdom and knowledge from such an old writing when we're in such a high technological society today?
That's an excellent question. The process of bringing these teachings together, I think, is a real lesson about learning itself. That when we read about the different discussions and the minutiae of the different things that people looked at to say, this is important to note, we can deal with that in our own way and say, here's what they decided was important. What do we decide is important? For instance, one of the teachings is that there are 3 things that a man is required to teach his son. The 3 things are Torah, which would be obvious, a craft, so that he doesn't become a thief, and the 3rd thing is how to swim. And so today we look at this and we look through all the commentaries and read why the rabbis said swimming was such an important thing, and we can derive what we mean from that. Perhaps it's about survival. Perhaps it's about something else. And we can take a look at it, and then we can ask our own questions. The rabbis of ancient times said these were the 3 most important things to teach your children. Do we agree? Would we select 3 different things? And then that's where these teachings keep growing and stay alive today. When we look at the ancient teachings and then decide how we feel about it.
Interesting. Dan, I know we have people watching that are going to say, why should I read the commentaries when these people got inspired from reading the Torah, the inspired word itself? Why should I go read a commentary? I'm going to go right to the word. What would you say?
That I would say that why limit yourself? To take a look at the Torah and find the beauty of that, and then to see what other wise people have said about it. That it brings it to almost like a bloom of a flower, where you would see a rose that is closed up, and it's beautiful. A closed rose is absolutely beautiful, and it smells pretty, and it's got the color, but then when it starts to blossom and it opens up, the fragrance comes out, you see all the different little petals, and you see that what looked beautiful just like that really has so much more inside. And that's what the Torah is. The Torah is a basis, and then the Talmud shows us how much more there is inside.
Yeah, they showed that very clearly in the play. Turn it upside down, look at it from every angle.
Exactly.
Really
one of the lines is it isn't left to right, it isn't up and down. Read the Talmud in circles around and around. That's because a page of Talmud has a very small column in the middle, and then all the commentaries from Rashi and others encircle it. And so there are footnotes and side notes and quarter notes and all different kinds of comments, and so that you can pick and choose which ones you're going to read first and in what order.
Well, Dan, unfortunately time has gotten us again. But thank you
There's
so much
more to tell.
for being with the crossover.
My pleasure.
Now stay tuned, because in this next segment you're going to get to watch more of Dan playing Rashi from the Talmud tale.
includes your relationship, your text, your speech, and your soul. Let's just say that I'm good at reading things. There isn't very much that escapes my eye. From a mile away, you're clearly needing things, and I can give you what you need if you let me try.
I'll try if you want, but it's hopeless.
Even the hopeless can keep hoping as long as they
Stay open. Don't judge it by its cover. An open book is like a door to take you places that you've never been before.
It's like the recipe for every dish you love to cook.
That's what it is. An open book. You may feel stuck or out of place. Feel that a frown's the sole expression on your face.
Still there's a remedy to absolutely change that look.
And here it is. An open book.
Tales of adventure so involving. You'll leave your worries far behind. Secrets told, mysteries for solving.
Kick your feet up, unwind. An open mind, an open heart. There can't be any better place for you to start. And we are here to persevere until you finish off the task you undertook. By hook or crook, there's help in the land and it's in your hand. An open book.
Here we go.
Ha! Yeah! Woo! A two! Ha!
That's all very nice, Mr. Rashi. But how can I finish something that I can't even seem to begin?
Oh, but you have begun. You have pen, you have paper, and you have thoughts.
Oh, yes, and right now I'm thinking about crawling into a hole.
Oh no! She's falling into category 5!
What's
A
that?
tragedy!
Pessimist!
Victims of self-pity!
Miscellaneous
Lost causes! Oh, we haven't had a lost cause since 1608.
She was a stumper.
And lost her mind.
Lost her head.
Which left us
Not to mention her.
speechless.
But I can change.
Oh.
Ah.
Open your eyes to what's inside you. You'll be surprised by all you see.
Though you long for someone to hide you, you've got someone like me. Time is now. No turning back. And all the signs would indicate you got the knack. And if you lose your way, we're here to stay and pester you until you're off the hook. Call me a schnook.
There's magic around.
All because you found an open book. An open book.
An open book.
An open book.
An open book.
An open book.
An open book.
An open book. An open book. How can we help you?
Well, there is this speech that I have to write about my Torah portion.
Ah, yes, the proverbial speech. Wonderful.
This will be fun.
Yes. Now, Rachel, to express yourself in speech means that you have arrived at certain conclusions.
Oh, well, yes, but I only have questions.
Excellent.
Rachel, this book, the Talmud, is a place where all your questions are welcome. It's a magical land of words and stories.
Of legends and laws, of arguments.
And solutions.
Well, is there anything in this Talmud that could help me write my speech? Could it make my mother less of a pain?
Oh.
Here again, Mitch and Rosalie Jerome.
Thank you for joining us on The Crossover. I know I got a lot out of today's show, and I hope you did too.
So join us next time on The Crossover, joining Jews and Christians through their God. Shalom.
Shalom.
You've been watching The Crossover. Join Mitch and Rosalie as they reach an ever-growing worldwide audience through The Crossover. We invite you to become a crossover partner right now by calling the number on your screen. For your monthly gift of $30 or more, you will receive the Crossover Partnership Pack, which includes a DVD of today's program, a personal greeting and prayer message from Mitch and Rosalie, more information about the Crossover Project. As you continue to support the Crossover each month, you will receive a new Crossover DVD, a monthly ministry report, and your name will be added to the Healing Room. Call now or log on to our website and join the growing family of Crossover Partners.